Thank you so much. A greeting of peace and a very good morning. Thank you, Dr. Park. She's my godmother as far as sustainability is concerned. I'm indeed very humbled and very privileged to be here. I think the first non-Korean to speak to you on the 20th anniversary of the RCE and the 10th anniversary for the SEJAHTERA forest. Yeah? All those things are very meaningful to me, and I don't know how I can relate this to you in half an hour, which seems to be very short. Yeah? What I will do now is basically try to bring the theme of the talk on blooming. Yeah? Blooming Sejahtera in Asia Pacific. And the word blooming to me is very, very meaningful because it means there's a kind of an evolution, a kind of growth. But not just an ordinary growth, but a growth from within. To see a flower bloom, there must be a seed. There must be something that is within the flower to make it grow and to make it bloom. And this is the message that I want to bring to you. While we talk about sustainable development 20 years ago, but there was no pandemic then. Now the factors of pandemic has been added in, and I'm trying to see where do we actually make some recognition of what this pandemic is all about. Yeah? So as you talk about coexistence, and coexistence is something which is very important, and I thank Dr. Park for reminding us today is the day of living togetherness, and I didn't know that. Yeah? So another occasion for us to think about how to coexist in a way that it is actually very meaningful to you, not a coexistence that is stagnant. It could be a coexistence, but everything stays fixed. The tree stays fixed, we stay fixed. There's no interaction. There is no kind of give and take, and there's no evolution and certain things. So when we talk about coexistence, my coexistence is something that grows at the same time. And this is what Tongyeong is so important for me, because it grows every time I visit Tongyeong, there's something new that I will learn. And today I think there's many more lessons that we will learn together from the experience, not only Tongyeong, and certainly from all of you. So this coexistence that is mobile, this coexistence that is evolving, the coexistence that gives new meaning all the time will make it more important for us to move ahead. Right? Now, one of the lessons that I learned, if I need to extract things, there will be 7 things I will talk to you. One of the things that I learned when I do sustainable development is how to make this coexistence real in the sense that we need to break the silos. In universities, it is something which is you see more often than not, because we were trained in university to be individuals, to work on our own, rather than to work in a collaborative way, the way we do it in sustainable development. So breaking the silos, making things working together and connecting things together is one of the fundamental things that if you want to make coexistence a real experience for us and for our students at the same time, right? And for that, my little experience will tell me that we need to create a common platform. That commonality is something which is important. The world now is talking about how different we are from each other. I think the time needs to come back when you talk about living togetherness is about how common we are in many of the things that we experience. Yeah? And living this common platform is something that we do, and this is what we call the flagship program, where we do focus, and this, but in this particular case, the focus is certainly sustainable development. That is a focus that has been accepted around the world by many people, and many institutions and countries are doing it. Again, this is a focus that I think we need to create very, very well. And as long as we can do this within our organization, and this is where, again, Tongyeong is an exemplary. I don't call them a team, you call them a team, I call them a family. They live like a family. There is no hierarchy in this place as far as I know. Although Dr. Nam is the director, but she doesn't behave like a director. She behaves like a parent that teach people how to be and live together as a family. And I think this is what we need, and I think this is what the world is lacking now. We don't have this kind of a link that is natural to us rather than trying to pretend there is something that we need to learn from. And once we get that, then how do you then transport this to the community as such? At the end of the day, sustainability is about the community. It's not about the university, it's not about your organization, it's not about us. It's about how do the community live together in that code of being a family, and this is where the engagement becomes important. Engagements means what is meaningful to them, not what is meaningful to us. In university, we often talk about what is meaningful to us and then try to transport it outside, which is not meaningful to them. So this engagement is basically what we are now trying to do an experiment. And the little experiment that we did is to learn how to live at the same time. Oftentimes we learn, but we do not know how to translate it. Oftentimes we learn is become more theoretical, more abstract, rather than in a practical terms. So this experiential learning is a powerful thing. That if I say I learned this from you, that means I have now internalized it, that I've understood what it is all about, and I then can translate it into something which is of impact to all of us. So these are about values that we also bring in at the same time, which I'll talk to you a little bit later. So learning now, it becomes an action. Again, this is where Tongyeong become exemplary, because they have places where you can actually act and learn at the same time, rather than sitting in a classroom and listening to people talking, but not knowing what it is all about. Putting it into practice, I think something which is now very, very important in terms of getting the experience and building the confidence at the same time. Now, in our sense, then, therefore, we want to change the word education into edu-action. Yeah, just change the word around a little bit. You get, how do you act when you have some piece of information to translate it into something meaningful? For that, I think we need to come back to who we are. We are all human beings, but I think half of us have forgotten how to be a good human person. And this is where the tradition becomes important. In our case, the word sejahtera is the moving point. Sejahtera means a person which is balanced, harmonious, and that is the kind of footprint that we want to leave behind. And the word insan in my language is a person. Sejahtera is what we are talking about today, being balanced, being harmonious, being peaceful, being together, and so on and so forth. Those things that is imbibed in the Sustainable Development Goal as such. Now, I would like to go a little bit on this. How do you arrive at this? When we look at the structure of education, since I've been involved in this for more than 50 years now, education, when I went in, is about the three things, what we call the three M's. It's about employment, the word manpower. It's about how to be innovative, how to be creative. It's about thinking and how to make your mindset align to this. And finally, now it's all about machines. It's about technology, it's about AI, it's about the fourth industrial revolution. And these are the things that we call the high tech today. And I think the 3M is what we were before the pandemic comes in. We were very happy with it. We talk about jobs, we talk about employability, we talk about marketability, and so on and so forth. These are jargon which are not academic or educational in a sense. These are jargon which is more on corporate and marketing sort of a strategy, right? So the education that we have, then we call it education without the soul. We forgot who we are, and there is a book that is written by Harry Lewis, Excellence Without Soul. Yeah, a great university that's forgotten what education is all about. And how do you bring back this education? The whole thing now becomes an industry. Education becomes an industry, all right? And we talk about meritocracy and all sorts of things, forgetting that some people are just not opportunistic enough to get the real education. So I call it a kind of a toxic environment that we need to detoxify. Now, once the pandemic comes in, then we begin to realize this is no longer functional. There's no employment, industry closes, yeah? Jobs are getting scarce, all right? The thinking become a different kind of thinking, a thinking to survive rather than just to create, right? And finally, the machine is not as helpful as we think they are because we are not actually part of it in the creation of it. So we want to move into something that I call the 3H. What is a 3H? The 3H is basically a realization that the pandemic has got some stranglehold on the 3M that we need to liberate ourselves from. We need to liberate ourselves from just employment to talk about the whole humanity. This is where the community comes in. It is not where you are, who you are, but it's about all of us being human, and we are from the same entity, whether we like it or not. We need to survive. We need to live together, and this togetherness becomes an important thing. And to do that, we need to move just away from thinking about it, but we need to talk about how to feel about it. And instead of mindset, we talk about the heart set, where it is where the emotions and this is where your mental health problems become an issue. And this is how I think we need to bring another set of learning as far as the heart is concerned. And from then, I think we want to move from the high-tech machines to what we call the high-touch machine. How do you make sense of being human as far as the machine is concerned? You talk about AI together, artificial intelligence. But I want to change AI into what I call authentic intelligence, meaning the intelligence is already within us and not outside us. And this AI is something that we are now debating how to interpret it and how to humanize it at the same time. From the 3H to the 3, from the 3M to the 3H is what we are working now today, and how do you bring back the soul, as it were. And when I talk of bringing the soul, it's about bringing in the values. To be a human being is to learn how to sympathize. The problem may be far away, thousands of miles. We cannot do much about it, but we can actually be sympathetic with it and do what we can at our level at the same time, right? The second values that I want to introduce, and I think all of us know this, how to be empathic. In other words, if you can go down and work with them and also help them to feel the way they feel and understand where they come from, that is an added value rather than just to sit down and sympathize. So the second value is empathy. And the third value, I think all of us know, in being Asian, how to be compassionate. Compassion is something that is part of the human person. If you lose your compassion, Confucius says you are no longer a human being. How do you keep this compassion alive and make it part of learning? These three values are never in our education system. Particularly when you talk about technology, it is devoid of this kind of values. How do you bring this back, these values? And this, I think, is something that we want to talk about. How do you change then the landscape? In other words, how do you detoxify what has been going around and bringing in the values so that values become part of what I call humanizing education. We want to be human first before we become engineers, doctors, lawyers, politicians, mayors, or whatever. Are we good enough to be that human person that can bring these three values to bear as far as education is concerned, right? And that will be then the future that I'm talking about. How do you humanize education the way it should be for the next time to go? For that, there are three things that I will talk to you about, and I will go back to our diagram. So when I talk about edu-action, it's about changing the 3M to the 3H and bringing the three values that I talk about. It could be more than three, but three, I think, is minimal as far as education is concerned, to make the experience, to make the learning more effective as far as a human being is concerned. So in our case, then we need to draw a roadmap. A roadmap means what is our focus in trying to bring different society, different community, different context. And therefore, you need to shape up into the kind of roadmap that we do. In our case, we talk about humanizing education, where the change becomes an alternative to where we need to go as far as the future is concerned. And for that, we want to humanize sustainable development. So sustainable development is not just about the environment. Sustainable development is not just about something which is outside us. Sustainable development needs to be within us. And I think that's a shift that we are trying to introduce when we talk about how do we actually interact with everybody around us as a human person to start off with. So on that note, I think we have developed, I think for those of you who have been to Malaysia, we have developed another idea of what a university, that is a combination of a community and university together. There's no longer, very much like what Tongyeong is all about, there's no longer demarcation where the university starts and where the universities end. They are together as far as learning is concerned, as far as the experience and exchanges is concerned. And that's what we call the community, where we try to transform education together in the context of togetherness. Yeah? And this is where SEJAHTERA is all about at the moment in time. But at the moment in time, it is still a very macro kind of an idea. idea that it's outside, and the learning is always outside in. We want to shift this around by turning it into what we call inside out. So number 7, the last step, is about how do you then bring this whole idea of human governance. I use the word governance because this is a kind of a catchphrase. Corporate governance, institutional governance. If you say human governance, then people will listen. If you say something else, people will not listen. Yeah? But it's the micro dimension rather than the macro dimension. And by that, I mean we need to have at least 3 things. When you talk about sympathy, empathy, and compassion, we need to use the head, we need to use the hand, and last but not least is to use the heart set that we talked about. And how do you do this? Is basically changing the kind of pedagogy, the kind of environment, the kind of approach. We talk about whole person approach, just like we talk about whole institution approach and a whole community approach. Teaching now is not about a whole person, it's about part of a person, especially when we talk about marketability, human capital, and so on and so forth. So we need to open out our minds, all right, and make sure not only the hands are part and parcel of that, but more importantly, how do we feel and where the heart comes in. And this combination of the 3H, hand, heart, and also head, becomes the kind of a micro sort of elements that we want to add in, where sympathy, empathy, and compassion is part and parcel of that learning experience. If you go into a classroom and you are not moved emotionally, then I think the teaching in the classroom will not be as effective. How to get you to move and to understand and to feel what you learn is something that all of us are now trusting into, and therefore the heart, to me, is a kind of a seat of learning that we need to focus on. In many of our tradition in the East, the heart is very substantial in terms of learning, where meditation, where mindfulness, where heartfulness are all placed. It is about the location of the heart. And how do you put this into a kind of a formal teaching or learning practices is something that we can talk to you about. Yeah? I want to end up by doing this. This is what we have experienced in our university in the last 4 or 5 years. We look at the community as a place where people come together, yeah, sharing and understanding things. But we look at the university where many things come together in the context of co-learning, in the context of collaborating, and also co-creating many things. How do you combine this together is where the idea of a community comes in. Your sense of belonging and your sense of practice needs to jive so that the community and university becomes one, no longer different. Yeah? So these are some of the real examples that we have done in the last 5 years. Every of these pictures are about building that community, right? And I would like to show you some statistics, because statistics sometimes, or rather, can be very persuasive. Since the year 2020, when the pandemic starts, and how do we then react with the pandemic? For the last 4 years, we have done this much. In this work that we are talking about, the practice, in the work of learning in action, more than I was told now, more than 10,000 students are involved. Yeah? And we have got not many instructors, because no instructors are trained in this. This is something which is new that we need to discover and learn. So these are people who are interested, who wants to learn, and they learn at the same time together with the student. We have initiated more than 400 projects, and these 400 projects are the projects that actually solve community problems. These are not just projects undertaken. These are projects that actually solve community problems. They become now the template of other students to follow through. Yeah? And we have location, we have moved beyond what the university is all about. We have gone to 300 locations into Malaysia, and now we are trying to forge a relationship with other countries, neighboring countries like Indonesia, Singapore, and also Brunei. Yeah? And the people who are impacted, people who benefited from this, from our estimate, is about 6,000 or more. And more importantly, I think we have now also get recognition from other bodies like UN, UNEP, and so on and so forth, in telling us that this is the way to go moving forward, making RCE a larger experience than what it was before. So when we talk about Sejahtera, we're talking about how do you widen up the sharing. I use water because water moves very fast. And it comes from the whole idea of the human person contributing to that pool of water so that people can share and make things happen as far as they are concerned. So on that note, I'll thank you. Assalamu alaikum and a greeting of peace.
Thank you, Dr. Dzul. If you have any follow-up questions to our two keynote speakers, Dr. Park or Dr. Dzul, please feel free to raise your hand. If you have any questions.
Thank you very much for your inspiring talks, both Dr. Park and Dr. Dzul. I have a question to Dr. Dzul. We didn't script, by the way. I'm always inspired by your communiversity initiative, and it's a big undertake. I'm sure there are so many resistance and also systemic challenges inside the university and outside of university, including the community. What do you think was the biggest challenges that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome?
Difficult question, but it's an important one. Yeah, I think what is difficult as far as this is concerned is our stereotype image of what a university is all about. And I think we need to understand that the university that we are emulating today are not the real university that we are thinking about. University in the tradition of the Chinese, the tradition of the Indian, the universities were there in even the 5th century before Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard comes into being. And that university was organized on the community basis. It is not organized on an industrial basis. It is not organized on a bureaucratic basis. It is organized on the need of the people. But because of the Industrial Revolution of the 1700 comes in, that everything now is reorganized into a structure that is meant for the market and the industry. I'm not saying the industry is not important. It is important, but you cannot neglect the community. And therefore, you get industry growing, but the community is still the way it was. When I go back to my university, the university now is known internationally, but the community is still like it was maybe 20 years ago. Yeah? All the knowledge of the university are not being translated to improve the community at the same time. And yet you blame the community are not a good community. They are backward, they are lazy, but they are not being told and being taught how to be like the university. And that's why this experiential learning becomes important. My student told me before we embark on this, they learn about poverty in an air-conditioned room. They read a book written by somebody else and say there's five factors of poverty. And then when we bring down to the ground to meet the people in the community, they don't find these 5 factors existing in the community. Because the book is written by somebody else. It's not even from the community. And they found their own reason why the university are poor. So they become what I call, and I'm very proud to say that, they become knowledge producers. Even the lecturers, even the professors doesn't know this because the professors do not go to the ground. They become knowledge producers. Now they can debate with the professor that I found this when I went to the committee. And they told me 3 months in the committee, sir, is better than 3 years in the university. Because the learning becomes relevant, they become thinkers of their own, they actually can, quote unquote, translate knowledge into very, very practical solution. I think that is a challenge. Because now, with the whole idea of a ranking, you need to be ranked number 1 in whatever, and everybody is moving into that kind of a model. And therefore, nobody wants to talk about the community, because if you talk about the community, you cannot be ranked. It is not part of the ranking sort of criteria. So our challenge is basically to make sure that we work together. And this is where I really salute UNU-IAS. For moving this idea, I want to pay tribute to Professor Van Ginkel, who make this idea of RCE and change the whole perception of what university is all about. I asked him, why don't we use the word university? He said, the moment you use the word university, you go back to the old model. You know? So RCE is actually a university of the future. It's just that we don't call it our university, because the moment you call it university, then all the old excess baggage will come in again. Right? And this is where I think the fight is all about. On the 20th anniversary, I look forward to the Okayama sort of declaration. How do you change this perception of those so-called universities? For you, just to give you one sentence, the word university was introduced in the year 1088 when they started the University of Bologna in Italy. And there are 4 criteria, and one of the criteria for the word universitas, then Jonghwi, he said, you must be the trustees of the European humanities tradition. If you don't have that in your charter, you cannot call yourself a university. So that is how the word university gets coined, and that is how we get disoriented, and that is how the university now needs to be reinvented and brought in the tradition that we have been talking about. I hope I give you these long-winded answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dzul. If you have any questions on the floor, you can ask in Korean also, because the simultaneous interpretation will be provided.
괜찮겠습니까? 우리말로.
Dr. Dzul, could you take your receiver? Thank you very much.
교수님 강의 너무 감동적으로 받았습니다. 그 중에서 3H 개념이라든지 금방 말씀하셨던 커뮤니티 그 너무나 새로운 개념을 받은 것 같아서 너무 감동적이었습니다. 그런데 통영 RC도 이게 지금 그런 개념이 도입되기 위해서는 초등학교, 중학교, 고등학교, 대학교가 서로 네트워크가 형성되어야 되고 소통이 잘 되어야 되겠다고 생각이 되고, 아까 전에 그 커뮤니티를 하기 위해서 400개의 프로젝트를 했다는데 그런 걸 하기 위해서는 이러한 소통이 중요할 거라고 생각이 듭니다. 그런데 그런 부분이 우리 지금 통영 RC도 쉽지 않고 다른 지역도 쉽지 않을 것 같습니다. 저 같은 경우에는 교수님 강의를 듣고 통영에서 하는 브릿지 투 더 월드 그 프로그램이 지금 고등학생들만 위주하는데 초, 중, 고, 대학생 같이 이렇게 하는 프로젝트를 하면 그런 커뮤니티를 할 수 있는 어떤 계기를 마련할 수 있을 거라고 개인적으로 생각하는데 그런 부분에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시고 좀 더 초, 중, 고, 대학이 소통하기 위해서는 어떤 것들이 더 필요한지 한번 조언을 해주시면 고맙겠다는 말씀을 드리고 싶습니다.
I think Park Jung-hee had got the answer. He's a technologist. What we are trying to do now, out of the 400 projects, we are trying to develop what we call a knowledge management system. If I remember very well when Professor Han Winkel talked about RCE, he said at the end of the day, we're going to end up with a global repository. In other words, this is where all knowledge are put in without copyright. They are all open access. You can go and take it, because it's not your knowledge, it's the knowledge of somebody else. But academically, we always put our name first and think that we owned it. That's not the case anymore. So we are trying to do a kind of a knowledge management system. These examples of successful, quote-unquote, projects could be accessed by anybody. So you may be in Korea, you may be in Africa, but if you go to the database and find the keywords and say, this is a project that you need, you can work on it, take it on, and move forward. So it is a shared vision that knowledge becomes for everybody. They have got the concept of Ubuntu, for example. How does that actually mesh with SEJAHTERA? This is something that we are trying to work on as far as that's concerned. So this sharing of knowledge using technology is an important thing for me. But the technology that I want to talk about is not the technology that is devoid of soul. In other words, we need to be the determinant of that technology rather than the technology tell us what to do, like the AI thing. It's a very classical example back home, when the students talk about how to draw a flag for Malaysia, and they use the AI, and they got different flags. It's not a Malaysian flag. Instead of 4 stars, they got 9 stars. Instead of 21 stripes, they got 14 stripes. In other words, you need to be in charge of that AI before you can use it. We are now told that AI gives you the answers for everything. And this is the kind of issues that I think we are now trying to get in when we talk about this computerization. This AI business, I'm sure it can be done. The student just declared, I went to this community, these are the problems, and give me the solution. The AI will give you, and the ChatGPT, a kind of a solution which is not real. These are issues that we are now grappling with, but we have decided to put this on a acknowledgement system that everybody can share. If Tongyeong can add to that acknowledgement system, it could be in RCE Tokyo for I know, then we can then extract this and becomes important for us in that sense. Now, I want to share you what I learned, and I shared this with my godmother here. I work with a university, but what I noticed is that when I move out and new rector comes in, a new president comes in, then the university cannot be sustainable because he wants to do what he wants to do. He doesn't want to do what the community wants to do, especially when you're trained outside of the community. So whatever we have started, maybe 3 or 4 years, it will change by one person, and that one person will take the university back to zero and start all over again. What I learned from Tongyeong is that because it's a community-based organization, it's not a university-based, there's no rector, there's no president, there's nothing, and you have a lady like this who works like a mother, he makes sure that everything stays on for the last 20 years. Whereas our case in university, the moment the rector changes, everything will change. And I think this is an issue that we are grappling now, and I've just confided to the other part, which is my god sister. How do we now create a base which is NGO, which is community-based, rather than... I'm not saying that university is not important, but university could be a secondary player rather than a primary player. And that's the kind of thinking that we have in mind. So I hope I have shared this with you, and we can probably work together on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dzul. The last question from our teenage students of RC Tongyeong.
네, 교수님의 좋은 말씀 인상 깊게 들었습니다. 저는 요즘에 국제 이슈나 사회 정책에 대해 관심이 많은 학생입니다. 그래서 이번 강의를 듣고 좀 제가 감히 질문을 드려보겠습니다. 혹시 교수님이 생각하시기에는 현재 말레이시아에서 ESD나 SDGs에 관련된 주제나 문제점이 대학에서는 어떠하게 언급되고 있는지 궁금하여서 질문 들어봅니다.
Okay, another good question. Sustainable development is a word that is coined by United Nations, I think, when they do the Brundtland Report of 1987. In other words, only beginning in 1987 or the early 80s, where the word sustainable development was brought into a document of an international sort of a delivery, right? Whereas then when I look at the word sustainable development and try to translate it into my language, I have problems. Because there is no equivalent to the word sustainable in our case, because our word sustainable development has always been the practice of SEJAHTERA. And that's why we use SEJAHTERA. So in other words, when you use the word SEJAHTERA, I don't have to learn it again because it is part of me. It's part of the authentic intelligence that I've got. It is not imported from Europe, neither it is imported from elsewhere. It is part of the community's ways of living that was there, but we have forgotten it through somebody talk about colonialism or whatever it is. It is then being stopped because this is considered irrelevant because the world is moving on a different sort of paradigm. So I'm sure in your context, if you go back to your history, the indigenous people have been practicing this for a long time. And you want to find that word and bring it into the what you call the mainstream, so that it becomes part and parcel of this. It is not something that we need to learn again because we have forgotten about it. So this is what we are doing now. So in the community university, the students are taught that this is part of the culture. Culture becomes an important. I mean, as far as culture is concerned, Korea to me is number one. You know, you invade the world through culture. Your K-pop, your K-drama, your K-cuisine, all this K. Everybody wants to know Korea through culture. They don't know Korea from technology point of view. They know from cultural point of view. And I think this is what we are trying to make now. How to bring the culture back so that this culture will be the motive for us to move forward. And this culture is not a dying culture, it's a living culture. So to answer your question, we use the word sejahtera to bring back what we have lost. Now that it's also used in Tongyeong, it makes it even better. Now when you talk about blooming in Asia Pacific, why we can use the word peace and everybody accepted it. If you word the word sejahtera, I think everybody should accept it also at the same time. Yeah. So it is not about the language itself, it's about the value embedded in it, and that's why I say sympathy, empathy, and compassion. That value is what sejahtera is all about. It could be a different name. It could be Ubuntu in Africa. It could be Ikigai in Japan. It could be Nunchi in Korea, whatever it is. But that value is a cultural value that binds us together. And that is a value that actually is sustainable. Without that value, the sustainability will go. And this is demonstrated, I'm sorry to just label it, this is demonstrated in the COVID-19. We've got a vaccine for all human beings, but only a few human beings access to this vaccine. The larger human beings are not, because the values are different. So we need to bring back the values, and the values is about the sustainability that we talked about. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. 점심 맛있게 드셨습니까? 예. It's actually a very difficult place to do the presentation after Wonjung's great presentation. I learned a lot actually from her. I was taking notes furiously, and then it was really, really great information that we learned. So I know it's very difficult to follow her presentation, but I will try. Today I was asked actually to present about RCE. So I will talk more detail talks about this RCE's movement and also what our plans are, which I already shared briefly in the morning at the congratulatory remark. But I will share more information about the activities that we are planning for this year. So the presentation will be this order. Why RCE at this point, and the main outputs that I wanted to share with you: action-oriented pedagogies by RCE. And then some thoughts for ways forward. First, why RCE? This is a pop quiz to prevent you from dozing off or falling asleep after the nice lunch. So I know they're here. We have a lot of legacy in ESD, legendary professors and teachers of ESD. But so I'm not going to ask these legendary professors, but then the students over there. So how long has education for sustainable development been around? 지속가능 개발 교육은 얼마나 오래됐을까요? 몇 년 됐을까요? This is a pop quiz. Anybody? Yes? Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it's been actually 30 years. 30 years, where, as our colleague just mentioned, it was born in 1992 at the Rio Summit. where the concept of ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, was born. Right? That's 30 years ago. So, I mean, more than 30 years ago, right? So if these 33 years, if ESD had worked, right, then we shouldn't have seen this kind of graph, right? We shouldn't have been in this kind of situation where no matter what we do now, even if we are cutting all the emission tomorrow, we cannot avoid 1.5 global warming, 1.5 temperature increase of global warming. We are at that kind of urgency now. I mean, probably after 2050, if we change our action today and very drastically, we may remain the current status of 1.5 Celsius above of the pre-industrial period. However, you can see we cannot go back, no matter what we do now. So we are actually, we made this kind of really big error and mistakes for our next generation by, focusing more on this unlimited economic growth that Ms. Byun just mentioned. Also, our Dr. Dzul mentioned this morning. So we really have to change our paradigm to from just knowledge about ESD, knowledge about sustainable development, to make our young generation take more actions and embed all this sustainable lifestyle into their daily life. So this is perfect, actually, example that RCE has to really put forward our actions, right? RCE is meant to have this kind of platform to situate ourselves into the community, into the city, into the town, to advocate the importance of sustainable development, not just the economic development, and involve everyone in the community to become the part of the solution, not part of the problem. So since so after this 1992, actually, it takes more than 10 years actually for the UN actually to create this decade of ESD. And from 2004, of the decade of the ESD, the UNU actually was kind of assigned to enact this decade of ESD by having RCE, the platform for education for sustainable development for the community. We started from 2005 with the 7 RCEs, and then RCE Tongyeong was 8th RCE after the first batch. And during the UN decade of ESD, we reached from 7 to 135 RCEs for 10 years. And then now, as of today, actually, we have 197 RCEs in the world. And we are still growing. I have to say, actually, as the head of the secretariat, I have to say sometimes we have to discourage some of the new members, new candidates from submitting their applications because we are actually reaching the capacity limit of managing or supporting our RC members to our full strength. So the interest is really growing, and then we have a lot of towns and cities around the world contacting us. Can they be part of the RCE? So we are that much growing now. And then if you look at the regional distribution here, of course, the Asia Pacific is the biggest region of RCE members. 79 members are in Asia Pacific. Understandably, because Asia Pacific is basically the region where the largest population reside, right? And then followed by Europe over there. And then Africa, Middle East, and Americas are the smallest, 30. the function of RCE, Global RC Service Center, located in Tokyo, where I work, is to facilitate collaboration among our members, to raise the visibility and expand our reach, to do some research on the great practices of RCEs, and do some capacity building as well. And we try to involve our RC members as much as possible to any international conferences and UN conferences. These are actually our members around the world. I'm sure you can read all these little fonts. So we have 197 members here now. And you can see regional advisors over there. Dr. Eun-kyung Park is there. We have 5 regional advisors. Asia Pacific, because we have the largest number of RC members, we have 2 advisors. The other from Penang, where currently Dr. Zhu is located. We have regional youth coordinators. This year, I have to be very proudly sharing that we have one regional youth coordinator from Korea, from Tongyeong, actually. And then, so Woojin Lee is our regional youth one of the regional youth coordinators. These youth coordinators are new mechanism because now youth voice is really, really important, and they are the leaders for the next generation. So we are actually having this mechanism to have their voice properly in our RCE activities. So with the current challenge that we are facing, it is really an urgent call that we have to rethink the education for sustainable development. So we now try to think at UNU-IAS as the Global Service Center for RCE, also Secretary for RCE. We thought about how we could situate RCE network into this new paradigm. And we have to rethink 3 things, basically. What to teach in ESD, whom to teach in ESD, and how to teach in ESD. So as far as what to teach is concerned, we have to ask our RC members to be upfront, to translate the global, very abstract agenda, global issues, into local actions. In terms of whom to teach, it's not just schools anymore, it has to be community. How to teach is not just about the awareness and knowledge, but to teach them how to take action based on their knowledge and belief. So this is actually the copy and paste of RCE's values, core values. You can see totally how it actually related to the new paradigm of ESD, but then it has been practiced by our RC members for the last 20 years, actually. So we are doing really well. We just have to, scale up how we have done this into the next level. So we are actually upfront to translate global sustainability goals into local actions. We are also proudly a multi-stakeholder network, and we try to be a living laboratory to facilitate transformative education and interdisciplinary cross-sectoral collaboration. So I just mentioned that we need to translate global activities, global agenda, into the local action, right? So we talked about it so many times, translating global agenda to local action. But what does it mean and why we have to do it, right? So another pop quiz now in the middle of my presentation, again to prevent you from falling asleep. So what is the biggest greenhouse gas emitter in 2022? Number 1, energy. Number 2, transportation. Number 3, industry. Number 4, agriculture. And number 5, building. Who think number 1, sorry, number 1? Number 2, right? Number 3, Okay, number 4. And number 5. Oh, half of you are not raising your hands. Is it the confidence issue, or is it like sleeping issue? Okay. So the answer is energy. And those who said industry, agriculture, you are not wrong, because this is a global scale. Okay, this is global issue, global statistics. When it comes to Indonesia, for example, it's a totally different story, right? Agriculture is the greatest emitter, followed by energy, and then industry. When it comes to Korea, energy is also the biggest emitter, but you can see transportation is the number 3, right? And agriculture is down there. Actually, we are doing the minus emission there, right? So this tells us how we should translate global issues into local action, right? By scientific evidence. It's not just abstract concept that we have to translate. It's really, we have to contextualize global issues into local issue. So RCE was born in this kind of concept, but I can see also, I heard from Dr. Zhou this morning and other legendary professors around the room that although we were born in this kind of concept, the true value of RCE has been kind of diluted nowadays. And so I just want to visit and reiterate the core concept of RCE. It's a really lifelong and life-wide ESD, and I just got the idea from Dr. Zhu's this morning's talk about edu-action. Yeah, so if we just shift to CNA, it's education, but it's edu-action now, that we need to really do the action through lifelong and life-wide learning, right? What I mean by, you probably have seen this, if you are RC members, you have seen this graph many times, this chart. So lifelong is like from, in the formal education, from primary to secondary to university and research centers, it has to be linked, right? And then vertically, and then and horizontally among the secondary schools, among the universities, among the primary schools, they have to learn together, right? And then we have to also include non-formal and informal sectors as well, by involving museum, by involving botanical gardens, by involving zoos and media and local NGOs. So this, the whole picture of how we work together is actually the model of edu-action and lifelong and life-wide ESD. And then when I saw all these great practices by RCEs, and I confessed already this morning how I became the greatest advocate for RCE after, after my experience in RC Tongyeong, right? And so I was thinking, this is too pity if I just know as head of secretariat of RCE, if it's just my knowledge about how great the RCs are, right? So we actually applied for the funding from our research funding in Japan. It's like a national research fund. And we got the funding. And we did actually a 3-year project. We are currently doing the 3-year project on action-oriented pedagogies, or RCEs. We started from these questions, right? What are the common factors that emerged from our RC activities to make this AOP, action-oriented pedagogies, successful? It was really my genuine questions. Why RCEs are so successful in making these action-oriented pedagogies possible. And how do RC activities integrate and intersect various components of those AOP in their approach to ESD and climate change education? So we did all the literature review, try to see what the action-oriented pedagogies are, and then try to interview 28 RCEs around the world who are really well-known, recognized as best RCEs who have been very successful in action-oriented pedagogies, including Tongyeong, including Greater Gombak, and including Kita-Kyushu as well. So we have interviewed all these great RCEs in 2023, funded by the National Research Funding. And these are the results. 7 key components. So we found that all those activities are really starting from real-world problem-based issues. It's not just from the textbook, it's really real-world issues. And all these RCs, of course, engage communities. But it's not just the community engagement, but then learners always take the lead. They are the ones who's identifying the issues, try to solve them, and together with community. 4 principles to do this was collaboration, interdisciplinarity, empathy, as Dr. Zhu this morning emphasized, and regional cultural relevance. So regional cultural relevance was really distinctive from our RC members because no other guidelines or curriculum actually mentioned this one. Actually, this one was beyond our literature review. And all the RC members, especially from Africa, they are saying the solution has to be culturally relevant. For example, reducing the meat consumption. Let's talk about only that part, Reducing the meat consumption is an important issue. And then like many developed countries, like the US, Canada, Korea, Japan, they try to be vegetarian as much as possible, or they try to at least practice vegetarian once a week. I do that too, once a week only. And one of my students actually did the same research in Malawi. And the Malawian people don't like the concept of reducing or being a vegetarian because, they are not doing the mass producing of meat to begin with. And meat is just a celebration, symbol of celebration, once a month kind of thing. And why are you taking away our nutrition, source? And we do the farming very sustainably. We don't kill all these animals just to eat just leg or just some part of the meat. We are doing really sustainable consumption for the meat. So if you look at that kind of a conversation, the solution really have to be culturally relevant and locally situated. You cannot just force everybody to follow the developed countries' practice of their belief of sustainable development. So let me share some of the examples that we interviewed. The first one is from RC Greater Burlington in the US. And they did with the middle school, high school students, educators, community members, and local organizations. And they did this youth participatory action research, exploring the global issues and identify local solutions. And working on local issues such as losses of green spaces and biodiversity and food security, so those kind of issues were given. And they identified further with community what are the exact problems that they want to solve together. So in terms of AOP then, we found they actually use real-world problem issues, community engagement, learner participation, empathy, and collaboration in a very active way. I just want to share one quote from the students. From the interviewee of the Greater Burlington. So it's just like what Dr. Zhu this morning mentioned, the same thing. They literally have to leave the students. They literally have to leave the school or their learning environment to talk to the people about the problems. Their understanding of issues around homelessness, hunger, gender equity, and some of those are coming directly from within the school because there is often those issues present, not only in the external community of the school, but in the internal community. So they actually learned by talking, going out of the school, talking to the homeless, talking to the people affected by climate change. And they brought those knowledge into the school to make solutions from their knowledge of the school they gained. So this is a great example of action-oriented pedagogies. The next one is from RC Greater Gombak and the famous community university, right? And well, this morning, actually, Dr. Zhu was very humble not to talk too much about this community university, but it's really a commitment. It's not just concept, it's 2-year compulsory courses every student of the university have to go through. Without this, you cannot graduate this university, right? So it's a really drastic change of the university system by adding this community university, community actions into the curriculum in a very formal, official way. So all the students there have to go through this 2-year compulsory community problem solving. The first year, they have to learn the basics of climate change issues, sustainability issues, how to profile the issues of the community and all those basic learning. The second year, they have to make a proposal to solve the issues of the community. Of course, this has to do with together with the community, right? And then the third semester of the second year, they have to execute the project. And then finally, they do the exhibition to showcase what they have done, what kind of impact they created. And I was one of those expo actually 2 years ago, and it was just a festival of community and students showcasing what kind of impact they made for the local people and then for themselves. And as Dr. Zhu just mentioned, there are more than now 10,000 people, 10,000 students involved, and 6,000 individuals of the community impacted. Finally, the RCE Southern Vietnam. This one is more kind of hackathon way. So the youth came to share the local issues again. It can be, disability, marginalized people because of the disability, or some climate change issues, and they have to do they have to find a solution together with digital technology. So in the end, there are 57 innovative projects and products, including, I've seen one of them is actually like this, if you look at the wheelchair over there, who had an accident, couldn't move. So now the youth actually tried to develop a more easy to use kind of a wheelchair for the people to be more mobile in their daily life. So with all these action-oriented pedagogies, outputs and examples, I would like to present finally the ways forward and the next steps. As I mentioned this morning, the first webinar,
releasing these action-oriented pedagogies from RCEs will be in 2 weeks, 27th of May, 6 to 8 Japanese time. We call it Teaching for Action in the Digital Age, Empowering Educators to Lead Local Solutions to Global Challenges. The target is actually educators, but anybody can come and join. Unfortunately, the link to register is not yet released. It's going to be released this afternoon, actually, UNESCO says. But please stay tuned. We will publish this information in our website as well. And as I mentioned again, we will do the regional training for Asia Pacific, Americas, Africa, and Europe, starting from June for our RCE educators. Anyone who's interested in locally implement this workshop, you can contact Global Service Center, and then we can customize to your country. But at the moment, we have only 4 regional workshops planned. RCE Global Conference to commemorate our 20th anniversary of RCE is happening in Okayama in October, as I mentioned. Also, Okayama Award 2025 is currently on. So if you have any great projects as an RCE or a non-RCE, doesn't matter. If you want to share your project of ESD, please submit your form to application to this Okayama Award 2025. And I think the application deadline is approaching quite soon, 31st of May. So please submit your applications if you would like to apply for the award. Finally, the expo, SDG Junior Camp is up. And this is going to be 29th to 31st of August in Osaka, Japan. And we are going to feature 3 RCEs there. And as you can see over there, the key theme for this RCE Expo is 2 things. One, requested by the Ministry of Environment of Japan, actually the donor. There are 2 things. One is to empower the youth. 2 is to use innovative technologies. So those are the 2 things that we are paying attention to now. So as you can see over there, you can see some, we may have some augmented reality or gamification of the SDGs, those kind of things, some interesting features, together with RC South Rift, RC Cebu, and the RC Greater Gombak. So if you are coming to Osaka to visit this expo around this time, please visit our booth as well, or you can even plan to come to our booth without, to other occasions. Yeah, with that, I thank you, everyone, very much for your attention, and you're always inspiring projects as an RCE and as an ESD leaders. Thank you very much.